visual aesthetics and such.
Yeah, I know there is an existing trail that's just recently leaked along that north side of the wetland that will provide access. We're looking at providing temporary signage to provide some education of what that wetland is accomplishing for the area. And we're looking to work further with helping others on how we might fully develop those opportunities for recreation or education.
In our master plan, we actually have, this is the future, this is phase one. We have little walkways that go into the areas that RDG designed. We're still talking with the city. I know this is head of engineering, but there's another trail that they're thinking about for the future in the next 3 to 5 years. They're going to go on the top of the levee, south of the amenity. But there is a complete trail system now on the north end, and in the next several years, we're going to talk about getting people into the actual wetland on like a boardwalk type facility. We have, in our development, it's called the Found. We actually have things that are built into the community that educate people about the community they live in and stormwater. And one cool thing that we're doing is a spray on, we're working with Parks and Rec. So when it rains, the pavement, it's almost like an adhesive. It's on the pavement. When it rains, the rest of the pavement gets dark, but it tells you a message about what's happening. I forget what it's called, but we have that incorporated into this system. And then we're working very closely with the school district and the city's Parks and Rec division to provide this as an educational opportunity for the local schools that people can come here and tour it and learn about what we're doing with stormwater. So it's going to be part of the curriculum moving forward in time.
So have you put a dollar value? I think more and more of these projects, there is, okay, this is the cost, $3.5 million for this project. But I think moving forward as Iowans, we need to start assigning a dollar value to the recreational opportunities, the aesthetics, the habitat value, because that is something that's a really key important part of this as well.
One of the key reasons why Skip Moore at the time voted for this project was he saw the way RDG was designing this development is he would talk about not just the human trail system, but a trail system, I forget what he called it, for the foxes and the coyotes and the deer. How do they move through this area? I forget what he called it. But it was very important in the strategic planning process that those green belt, those ways that are going to, he saw it was essential to keep the habitat healthy, to keep all those different critters in there. And I forget what he called it. I know you guys remember, Craig. But anyway, that was part of the design process. It was intentional. How do we value it? We actually value, as a developer and city, we're looking at the tax dollars and the value of the investment. I don't think anybody's putting numbers to that added value, but it's there. We know it's there because it's what's driving why people want to live there.
Joe, I was going to say that it would seem to me that the rapid sales and that people are wanting to inquire about living there before things are even built speaks to the fact that the market is recognizing there is a value to that.
I can definitely see the city seeing it. This piece of investment is very important for the downtown and what they could use with those tip dollars. So nobody's really analyzed it, but I think it's there. I don't know how you would, but at least
They do it in Minnesota. I have a couple little projects that I looked at up in the capital region. They require that be done now on projects.
We see water trails as another huge benefit to downtown, but we don't really know how to quantify that yet.
So, but I heard you say you use stormwater utility money. Did you use stormwater utility or did you use TIF dollars?
Both.
For the construction of the basin itself was stormwater utility and SRF.
Okay.
So
where the TIF dollars come in?
private partnership here. So they took over the basin. We had to first go in and clean up all that environmental junk that was there, right? We had to figure out how to. If we look at it just as the basin itself, they stormwater, but it's more nebulous. Everything went in together. So there's TIF resources that were utilized to help in that effort. Does that make sense? We had to go in and deal with a pretty bad situation. And so the developer took a portion, the city took a portion, and it was funded through private, TIF, and stormwater utility. So it's kind of a combination of everything working together. It was great. The environmental cleanup alone was just about $3 million.
One last question, and I always ask questions. But, so this is for both of you. You know, we're involved in a lot of training, and I would like to be aware of staff needs, and to make sure, you know, if we're adding more of these features to the landscape, that there be people trained in how to do this. So maybe I'll ask both of you, perhaps a little bit later as a follow-up. It sounds like Parks and Recs Department are picking up some of those activities, you know, and looking to the future, just to make sure that there are training opportunities for those staff, to make sure things are inspected. You know, this is a weed, this is not a weed, and that the practices are functioning correctly.
Right. Yeah, ultimately, a lot of being public works that would maintain the basin itself, but we would get support from parks as needed for some of those inspection opportunities, and then also we anticipate having a kind of green infrastructure team, I guess, or part of an operations, a team within operations focusing on these things and gets the proper training too.
So I'll probably follow up with you guys, just to make sure that, you know, training-wise, we have things available for you.
And I hate to cut us off, but Greg Pearson has 90 seconds to do per trail. A lot of great discussion. But
It's okay, Greg. My project's more important than Denny's.
but we wanted to show a project that's under construction, and we also wanted to show one that's been in the ground and functioning, and we actually visited previously. So Greg, go right ahead. If
When do
you
you want me to wrap up then?
Oh, you just go.
71. No questions, Pat. I'll stop.
That's good questions. But certainly, you know, all of this information is going up on the Google Drive, and I will send out that link to everybody. And then, you know, if there are conversations in between, things that would inform the full group, you know, please make sure that you share that back. So you've got 60 seconds. Go.
All right. I'll just do a little dance and we'll all good. All right. And most of you know who I am, Greg Pierce with RDG Planning and Design. Here today to talk about Prairie Trail, and I'm going to give you a little background on the project, and kind of just fly through a bunch of pictures to show you what's been going on over the last few years. This is a project that I was involved with before I started my work at RDG. I worked on this project for about 8 years, 8 to 9 years. It was kind of my baby. There was 2 big copy boxes sitting under my desk that had all things Prairie Trail in it at all times that you could pull in. So there was always stuff going on. I was doing other things too, but this was a lot of the work I did for about 8 years at the end of my time in Dallas. But then DRA Properties was the master developer for Prairie Trail, and then there was a lot of direct involvement with the city. I'll talk about how that happened. So back in, if you would have flown over this area back in about 2004, 2005, this is what it looked like. We are right down here somewhere, the building we're in, which didn't exist back then. But you can see basically this big farm in the middle of Ankeny. Ankeny had kind of grown around this area. This was the Iowa State University Research Farm. It's about 1,100 acres. So you have the DMAT campus on the south, you have John Deere manufacturing operations up here in the north, and then the kind of older developed parts of the community up in here, and then the new growth kind of surrounding the community all around. So it was this undeveloped parcel in the middle of the community, and everybody kind of had their eye on it for a long time, but it really, you know, it seems odd that this research farm is sitting in the middle of this rapidly growing community, but for a long time, the university really couldn't do anything about moving it, because if they would have sold it, the funds would have just gone to the general fund for the state, and they wouldn't have had any funds to actually build a new farm somewhere else. So in 2002, there was actually a bill that was passed that allowed Iowa State to sell the farm and then keep the revenue from the sale so they could move it to a different location. And that started the momentum of the city having a process of like, okay, what are we going to do with this? They adopted a new comprehensive plan, and then they wanted to really focus this development on this area that's right in the heart of the community. Some of what would go on then was framed by things that happened in 2004. There was a big flood event that happened on Foremount Creek. The city obtained their NPDS permit in 2004. So there were a lot of things that started raising the awareness to the community of, well, if we develop this 1,100 acres, what are we going to do about stormwater? We've got to pay attention to that because it's a big area. Finally, the university was able to sell the ground to the city, and I think the city held on to it for about all of 2 minutes. They literally bought the ground, and then prior to that, they had put out an RFP for a master developer and they selected proposals, and they ended up selecting DRA Properties as the master developer for the development. And that began the partnership with DRA and the city to develop that ground. So basically just kind of passed hands from ISU to the city and then to the developer, DRA Properties. And then from there, they put out an RFP for the master plan. And that's where I started kind of getting involved with that. So they threw out a bunch of things that they wanted in this RFP. They wanted a master plan. They were looking at urban design, common theme. They wanted development design standards. They were really looking for a town center. They wanted to have a big, powerful, active commercial district. And then you can see the one I've highlighted there, conservation design of stormwater management. I'm not sure all of us really knew what that meant at the time, but they knew they wanted a higher level of stormwater management on the site with other things that have been going on across the community. And then there was, as part of the agreement with DRA Properties, the city originally agreed to pay $20 million for essential improvements. A lot of those were streets and sewers, but there were some stormwater projects that would come into. As they would do that, then the developer would kick 1.25 times that into a civic trust fund that could be used to fund other things around Prairie Trail and through the rest of the community. Most of it would be in Prairie Trail, so things like the aquatic center, I think the police station, some other things that happened that were city facilities were funded by that civic fund. So the city would kind of use TIF dollars and some of the CIP monies to build stuff. The developer would then, as they started to build houses and sell houses, they would kick money into the civic trust fund, and that allowed them to build some of the things across the area. Where I started getting involved with this is we were originally on the master plan team. We were very interested from the start, and I knew, I didn't know a lot about community planning. I was a civil engineer. So we reached out to Urban Design Associates out of Pittsburgh, and then they led the team and assembled this group you see up here, a variety of different people on the original master plan. And we had a series of charrettes and looked at the site, started thinking about housing, had to mix in a photo of me with more hair than I have today. It was cut shorter, but I swear to you, there's a lot less than today than there was back then. So a lot of workshops to figure out how we were going to do things, but at the core of it was this conservation ethic of stormwater. So we had to look at, starting with the lay of the land, what does the topography tell us? There were several major drainage ways running through the site. How are we going to deal with those? That started to kind of lead us thinking about, well, maybe there's kind of a greenway system that could be part of this community, that we could actually work with those drainage ways rather than trying to work against them. There were also some soil considerations. There were some kind of more difficult to develop soils in the southwest part of the subdivision, and some things along some of those major drainage ways. Maybe those are reasons to not develop in certain areas as well. And we started to lay out a framework from that. How much area are we going to need to manage stormwater? What is it going to take to achieve the goals? And from all of this, we started to develop this kind of heat map of okay, it seems like these are the areas that are getting more difficult to develop in. And if they're going to be more difficult to develop in, can we do something else in those areas that will create more value? And from that, this was the original master plan that came out of that planning session. So you can see a variety of greenways that were developed along those corridors, and integrated into those greenways, which were going to be primarily owned and maintained by the city, were stormwater management features. And if you're just a layperson and you go out there today, you may not really see, oh, that's a stormwater basin. You may just be like, oh, that's a lake I like to fish at, or that's kind of a wetland that I like to walk around the trail. But they do serve a stormwater function. And here's some rendering of what they thought some of these green corridors could look like when they were all developed. And one of the difficulties at the time was the stormwater management manual was a work in progress. It was about 2006 when we were trying to figure out how this was all going to happen. And I was desperately calling Jennifer Welch and other people saying like, hey, I know you guys are working on the stormwater management manual. Can you kind of send me some draft copies so we have some clue of how this could work? And she was kind enough to do that. There were a lot of conversations with Steve Jones up at Iowa State, like, kind of walk me through this and interpret this for me, what we're going to do. But at the heart of this, what ended up happening is essentially what is in the stormwater management manual today, that the Prairie Trail adopted unified sizing criteria. So we were capturing and treating those 1 1/4 inch storm events. There were detention requirements set for the 1, 5, and 100-year storms. And then there was a lot of discussion about how much are we going to do in these regional areas and how much are we going to require these smaller to be done on site. And I'll get into that in a minute. And then there was also a desire to not do more of this in green space and less of big pipes. So an overall goal originally was to try to limit storm sewer pipe sizes to about 36 inches. Once it got to be there, we wanted it in a basin or in a greenway.